Mr. Chairman, I think we're about ready to go here. Just want to make sure that West Hartford TV is up and running. I think our host, Rob, is going to touch base with Jen and make sure that she's ready.
Okay, I'm ready when the group is.
All right.
We are live.
We are live. Excellent. Okay.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. This is the call to order. Good evening. I'm Todd Doyle, Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's virtual meeting and public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The required meeting agenda, application materials, and legal notice are all available on the town website. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this hearing is being conducted in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Orders 7B and 7I. Will the zoning enforcement officer please call the roll?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. Michael D'Amato.
Here.
Todd Doyle.
Here.
Angelo DiMatteo.
You're on mute, Angelo.
Here.
Thank you. Michael Johnson. That audio sounded a little rough, Mike. Can you redo that?
Is that better?
It sounds like you're a robot. but I know you're here, so we'll start with that. Commissioner Don Neville.
Present.
Thank you. And John Harris, I'm confident, is not here, as well as Olinda Morales. Hearing nothing, we'll move on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pudlick. Again, this is Todd Doyle, Chair. For the record, I'd like to note that we do have a full quorum of the board. Board members and town staff are participating via WebEx. Members of the public can view the meeting live on West Hartford Community Television or on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier TV Channel 6098 or at whctv.org. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing, which will be available on the town website. Because of the virtual format of tonight's meeting, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to cover. First, I ask all participants to please mute their microphones on devices when you are not speaking. Second, pursuant to Executive Order 7B, all speakers must state their name and title each time they speak. Also, I will ask members of the board and the applicant not to address any other participants directly. Board and requests for information must be made through the chair. After you state your name, simply preface your question or comment with "through the chair." And when you are done, I will recognize the person who is most appropriate to respond. Although these practices may feel rigid and awkward, they will ensure that the meeting is conducted in an orderly fashion and that members of the public who are listening can understand the discussion. With that, will the zoning enforcement officer please read the legal notice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. West Hartford Zoning Board of Appeals legal notice. Town of West Hartford Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a special meeting and public hearing at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 15th on the following. Petition 06-20, 341 North Quaker Lane, petition of Julia Ehrlich, requesting a variance to section 177-20 obstructions in yards, requesting a plus or minus 6-foot variance to the 10-foot side yard setback requirement for the construction of a 6-foot by 7-foot landing and stairs per plans on file, R10 zone. At these hearings, interested persons may be heard or may submit written communication. The applications related to the items above are available for public viewing on the Zoning Board of Appeals website at www.westhartfordct.gov/brdcom/cba/default.asp. Current ZBA agenda or by request via email to comment.tbz@westhartfordct.gov. Virtual meeting viewing instructions. The public hearing will be conducted exclusively as a virtual meeting in accordance with Executive Orders number 7B and 7I issued by Governor Ned Lamont. The public hearings will be broadcast live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier TV Channel 6098 and streamed live at www.whctv.org. Audio comment. Any interested person may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code 129-113-4048 at 6 p.m. Participants using caller ID blocking will not be permitted to participate. Participants will be called on in the order in which their call was received. When prompted by the chair and/or moderator, participants will have the permission to speak on matters germane to the hearing. Written comment. Any interested person may submit a written comment via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Written comments will be made part of the record on the July 15, 2020 public hearing and posted on the town's website. In order to be included as part of the record, comments must meet the following requirements. Comments must be received no later than 3:30 p.m. on July 15, 2020, although you are welcome to write in if you are watching now. The subject of the email shall be applicant, application number, and address, ZBA, July 15th public hearing. The body of the email must begin with the interested person's full name and street address. Comments must be germane to the application and no longer than 500 words. And just for the records, a sign was posted at the property of 341 North Quaker Lane, and abutter notices have been sent out. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. As promised, because of the virtual meeting format, there are some special rules and procedures regarding hearings that I will need to cover before we begin. First, phone access is only intended for members of the public who wish to actively participate and provide comments on the noticed application for the first application that Brian just referenced. If you are interested in speaking on this item, please call 1-408-418-9388 and enter access code 129-113-4048. If you are on the phone and you do not plan to speak, please hang up and watch live television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5, Frontier TV Channel 6098, or streaming at www.whctv.org. Again, if you do not plan to comment on this application, please hang up your phone now and instead listen to the hearing on the TV or internet. For members of the public who are still on the phone, please do not mute your device. The meeting moderator will keep everyone's line muted until it is your turn to speak. If you mute your own line, the moderator may not hear your voice when he calls for comment. Second, I'd like to describe how the hand-raising process will work. Unfortunately, our conference technology does not allow us to identify individual callers by name. So when the public comment portion of this meeting begins, the moderator will randomly unmute one call-in line and ask everyone to say their name at the same time. The voice that we hear will belong to the person whose line is unmuted, and that person will then be recognized by the moderator and asked to restate their name and provide their street address. We will repeat this process until we have unmuted every phone line. It is very important that you say your name each time you are prompted by the moderator. If the moderator unmutes a phone line and does not hear a voice after the prompt, the phone line will be removed from the conference. If you have called in and are also streaming the meeting on YouTube or watching on TV, please silence your other device when you speak. Otherwise, there will be an echo because there is a slight delay in the TV and streaming broadcast. Third, I ask that all speakers keep their comments brief and germane to the application. Obscene, offensive, or threatening language will not be tolerated. Anyone who violates this rule will receive a warning, and if the conduct continues, I will ask the moderator to mute that person's phone line for the remainder of the meeting. If the violation is egregious, that person will be muted immediately. Fourth, the public was provided opportunity to submit written comments on the application via email and mail. These comments have been published on the town's website as a PDF and are embedded in the online agenda. For the record, the zoning enforcement officer will now read the names of all those who submitted written comments. Mr. Pudlick?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Ms. Birmingham to state on the record whether or not there's been any commenters.
Chair, there have been no commenters on this application.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Birmingham. Members of the public are welcome to continue sending comments to comments.tpz@westhartfordct.gov, and those comments will be distributed to members of the board and also read into the record. Finally, I'd like to outline for all attendees the rules of engagement and how the board operates the public hearing. Those presenting or commenting should state their name and address for the record. Please spell your name. Board members also may ask questions during the testimony of the applicant. All questions and comments will be directed through the chair, as mentioned previously, and only after recognition by the chair, including follow-ups. If feasible, the chair will have the members hold their questions until the end of the applicant's presentation or the end of a logical break in the applicant's presentation. Following the testimony of the applicant, the public will have a chance to comment about the current application in the following order in the manner previously described. 1, upon conclusion of the public's comments, the applicant will have an opportunity to address the opinions expressed. Upon the conclusion of the applicant's rebuttal, and if there are no further questions from the board, the public hearing will be closed. It is the practice of the board to render a decision on an application the same night, following all items on the public meeting agenda. I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone in advance for your patience. This is only our second virtual public meeting, and we're still learning from the experience. There are bound to be some bumps and glitches along the way, but we do remain committed to the principles of open and transparent government. With that, will the applicant please proceed with their presentation?
So we'll ask Julie to jump in now with North Quaker.
Hi, everyone. I am Julia Ehrlich. I reside at 341 North Quaker Lane. That is the house that we own. We're asking for a variance to the 10-foot setback on the right-hand side of our property, as we're looking to put a door in our kitchen that would allow us direct access or better access to our backyard. Our hardship is due to the way the house is laid out, and I think you have that information, but the way the house sits and the way the garage is attached to the back of the house, we have no access to our backyard. So in order to use our backyard, we have to go down the driveway, pass our cars, and then onto the backyard. So having this door from the kitchen to the side yard would greatly improve our life and would allow us to really use our backyard. We have gotten the blessing of the neighbor that is to the right of our property. They're fine with us doing so. I'd like to note that the house in the back of us, which is 42 Middlebrook Road, is definitely closer than 10 feet to that property line, and it's not just a deck or stoop, it's actually their structure. So if we can have that house close to us, I'm hoping we could at least get a small deck on the side of ours. And that's about it. I thank you for your consideration and understanding.
Thank you for that. At this time, are there any questions from any of the members of the board or the applicant?
Commissioner DiMatteo, question for the applicant. Commissioner Doyle, how many entry points to the home do you have? I see the front door. Are there any other exit points to your home?
I'll ask
Can I answer?
Yes, please do.
Okay, I didn't know if it had to go through that. We have 2 points of entry at the moment. We have the front door, and then we have a side door that is on the left-hand side of our house, right near the garage. So it's an attached garage that is actually detached. You have to step out of the garage to then get into the house, and that's the door.
Okay, and forgive me, I don't see it here. What's the total square footage of the home?
It's 2,200 square feet and change,
And what do you have for bedrooms?
3 bedrooms.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner DiMatteo. Are there any other members of the commission that would like to address a question for the applicant? Hearing none, are there any members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the application? Mr. Moderator, I don't know if you would like to trigger the hand raising procedure?
I will say at this time, there are no call-ins currently.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're,
So there is no one also who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Hearing none?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, that will close this public portion of the application. I thank you. We will hear all of the applications this evening and then decide on each application. So you're welcome to remain online or watch on television to see the remainder of the proceedings, or you can wait for a letter from the zoning officer in the mail. Thank you. Brian, would you read the next legal notice, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. West Hartford West Hartford Zoning Appeals, Board of Appeals legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a special meeting and public hearing at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. On the following, this time it's petition number 07-20, 68 Richard Street, petition of S. Dewey requesting a special exception in order to maintain a customary home occupation for an architecture business as an accessory use to the residence for a period of 5 years. Per section 177-49 and plans on file RM3R zone. At these hearings, interested persons may be heard or may submit written communication. The applications related to the items above are available for public review on the Zoning Board of Appeals website at www.westhartfordct.gov/BRD/COM/ZBA/default.ASP. Click current ZBA agenda or by request via email to comments.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Virtual meeting viewing instructions. The public hearing will be conducted exclusively as virtual meetings in accordance with Executive Orders number 7B and 7I issued by Governor Ned Lamont. The public hearings will be broadcast live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier TV Channel 6098. And streamed live at www.whctv.org. Audio comment. Any interested persons may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code 129-113-4048 at 6 p.m. Participants using caller ID blocking will not be permitted to participate. Participants will be called on in the order in which their call was received. When prompted by the chair and/or moderator, participants will have the permission to speak on matters germane to the hearing. Written comment. Any interested persons may submit a written comment via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Written comments will be made part of the record at the July 15th, 2020 public hearing and posted on the town's website. In order to be included as part of the record, comments must meet the following requirements. Comments must be received no later than 3:30 p.m. on July 15, 2020. or sent in immediately right now. The subject of the email shall be application number and address, ZBA July 15th public hearing. The body of the email must begin with the interested person's full name and street address, and comments must be germane to the application and no longer than 500 words. And for the record, a sign was posted at this property and abutters notices were sent out.
Thank you, Mr. Pudlick. So again, some of this may sound repetitive, and we apologize in advance for that, but these are the procedural requirements that we need to meet in order to have a valid public meeting here in Connecticut. So I will go over it once again, some of the rules here. First, phone access is only intended for members of the public wishing to actively participate and provide comments on the noticed application for 68 Richard Street. If you are interested in speaking on this item and this item only, please call 1-408-418-9388 and enter access code number 129-113-4048. If you are on the phone and you do not plan to speak on this application, 63 Richard Street, please hang up and watch live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5, Frontier TV Channel 6098, or streaming at www.whctv.org. Again, if you do not plan to comment on this application, please hang up your phone now and instead listen to the hearing on TV or internet. For members of the public who are still on the phone, please do not mute your device. The meeting moderator will keep everyone's line muted until it is your turn to speak. If you mute your own line, the moderator may not hear your voice when it's your turn to speak. Second, I would like to describe how the hand-raising process will work. Unfortunately, our conference technology does not allow us to identify individual callers by name. So when the public comment portion of the meeting begins, the moderator will randomly unmute one call-in line and ask everyone to say their name at the same time. The voice that we hear will belong to the person whose line is unmuted. That person will then be recognized by the moderator and asked to restate their name and provide their street address. We will repeat this process until we have unmuted every phone line. It's very important that you say your name each time the moderator prompts you. If the moderator unmutes a phone line and does not hear a voice after the prompt, that phone line will be removed from the conference. If you have called in and are also streaming the meeting on YouTube or watching on TV, please silence your other device when you speak. Otherwise, there will be an echo because there is a slight delay in the TV and streaming broadcast. Third, I ask that all speakers keep their comments brief and germane to the application. Obscene, offensive, or threatening language will not be tolerated. Anyone violating this rule will receive a warning, and if the conduct continues, I will ask the moderator to mute that person's phone line for the remainder of the meeting. If the violation is egregious, that person will be muted immediately. Fourth, the public was provided opportunity to submit written comments on the application via mail and email. These comments have been published on the town's website as a PDF file and are embedded in the online agenda. For the record, the zoning enforcement officer will now read the names of all those who submitted written comments. Mr. Pudlick?
Chair, there have been no written comments for this application.
Thank you, Brittany.
Members of the public are welcome to continue sending comments to comments.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. And those comments will be distributed to members of the board and also read into the record. Finally, I'd like to outline for all attendees the rules of engagement and how the board operates the public hearing. Those presenting or commenting should state their name and address for the record. Please spell your name. Board members may ask questions during the testimony of the applicant. All questions and comments will be directed through the chair and only after recognition by the chair, including follow-ups. If feasible, the chair will have the members hold their questions until the end of the applicant's presentation or the end of a logical break in the applicant's presentation. Following the testimony of the applicant, the public will have a chance to comment about the current application in the following order in the manner previously described. Upon conclusion of the public's comments, The applicant will have an opportunity to address the opinions expressed. Upon conclusion of the applicant's rebuttal, and if there are no further questions from the board, the public hearing will be closed. It is the practice of the board to render a decision on an application the same night following all items on the public meeting agenda. I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone in advance for your patience. This is only the second virtual public hearing of the ZBA, and we're still learning from the experience. There are bound to be some bumps and glitches along the way, but we remain committed to the principles of open and transparent government. With that, will the applicant please proceed with their presentation?
Good evening, Steve Dewey, owner at 68 Richard Street. As the application indicates, I'm here to maintain having the use of my property to run an architectural business. If I am correct, this is, I believe, my third renewal. I started with my initial application, which was for a 1-year period. I think it was then a 3-year period and a 5-year period. And now I'm here to request an additional 5-year period. Just really quickly, my background, I started my business almost about 10 years ago when I first applied, and did maintain full use of my residence as an office for my business for about strongly the first 4 years. And then I got married and needed to turn the office space back into a guest room for the in-laws. So I did temporarily have a out-of-home office. And we did add on to our residence to create a room above our garage, which would serve itself better as a home office and could be dedicated. But as luck would have it and time would have it, that needed other uses. And my wife also started her business. And the timing of when I renewed versus the leasing that I had going on, I ended up keeping my out-of-home rental space, and I currently still have a rental space with just under 1 year left on it. So the rentals and the home office haven't timed themselves exactly, but especially now with COVID, I do like the option of being able to work from home if it becomes more necessary. As I'm saying, I'm not using it full time at this point, but I do want to maintain my application to have that for another 5 years. So if I do have to not renew a lease or have other circumstances come up, have that option to continue to run my business from my residence if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. And do you occasionally have, how often would you say that you have clients visit your office? I understand it's not in your home now, but when you are up and running at your
I
home.
mean, it would be once a month, if that. I typically go to my clients' properties. I may have a rep of some sort or a contractor drop off a drawing or a product sample. That's very brief. I do have 2 driveway parking spots and 1 garage parking spot, all which was part of the original application. The street, I know it's not necessarily part of this application, but the street I live on does allow for street parking. So depending on who's there, again, it's just like a UPS truck, someone pops in real quick and is on their way.
And are those visits by vendors and clients limited generally to the 9 to 5 hours? That you
Yes.
stated in your application? Okay, all right. Are there any other members of the board who have questions from Mr. Dewey? Mr. Public or Ms. Birmingham, are there any members of the public that we have queued up to speak either in favor or in opposition to the application?
I will ask our moderator to chime in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, there are no call-ins.
No call-ins. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Dewey, for your presentation. You're welcome to listen in on television or on the West Hartford website for the remainder of the hearing, or you can wait for our mailing of our decision to be rendered in the mail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Public, we're ready for you to read the, I believe Mayflower is skipped, so we're ready for you to read the the next application.
Wonderful. West Hartford Zoning Board of Appeals legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a special meeting and public hearing at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 15th on the following. Petition number 09-20, 19 White Pine Lane, petition of M and S Miller requesting a variance to section 17720E, obstructions in yards, requesting a plus or minus 15.4 foot variance to the 50-foot rear yard setback for the construction of an 18 by 36-foot deck at the rear of the house, per plans on file R40 zone. At these hearings, interested persons may be heard or may submit written communication. The applications related to the items above are available for public hearing view on the Zoning Board of Appeals website at www.westhartfordct.gov/gov/BRD/COM/ZBA/default.asp. Current ZBA agenda or by request via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Virtual meeting viewing instructions. The public hearings will be conducted exclusively as virtual meetings in accordance with Executive Orders number 7B and 7I issued by Governor Ned Lamont. The public hearings will be broadcast live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier Channel 6098 and streamed live at www.whctv.org. Audio comment. Any interested persons may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code 129-113-4048 at 6 p.m. Participants using caller ID blocking will not be permitted to participate. Participants will be called on in the order in which their call was received. When prompted by the chair and/or moderator, participants will have the permission to speak on matters germane to the application. Written comment. Any interested persons may submit a written comment via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Written comments will be made part of the record at the July 15th, 2020 public hearing and posted on the town's website. In order to be included as part of the record, comments must meet the following requirements. Comments must be received no later than 3:30 p.m. on July 15th, 2020, or they can be submitted right now. The subject of the email shall be application number and address, ZBA July 15th public hearing. The body of the email must begin with the interested person's full name and street address, and comments must be germane to the application and no longer than 500 words. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the legal notice for, actually, let me just comment on the record that a sign was indeed posted at 19 White Pine Lane and abutters notices were duly mailed out to all the abutting property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Pudlick. So as promised, because of the virtual meeting format, there are some special rules and procedures regarding hearings that I need to cover before we begin. Once again, I apologize to the extent that this is repetitive or redundant, which is a statement that is itself repetitive and redundant. Phone access is intended only for members of the public who wish to actively participate and provide comments on the noticed application for 19 White Pine Lane. If you are interested in speaking on this item, please call 1-408-418-9388 and enter access code 129-113-4048. If you are on the phone and do not plan to speak on this application for 19 White Pine Lane, please hang up and watch live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5, Frontier TV Channel 6098, or streaming at www.whctv.org. Again, if you do not plan to comment on this application, please hang up your phone now and instead listen to the hearing on TV or internet. For members of the public who are still on the phone, please do not mute your device. The meeting moderator will keep everyone's line muted until it is your turn to speak. If you mute your own line, the moderator may not hear your voice when he calls for comment. Second, I would like to describe how the hand-raising process will work. Unfortunately, our conference technology does not allow us to identify individual callers by name. So when the public comment portion of the meeting begins, the moderator will randomly unmute one call-in line and ask everyone to say their name at the same time. The voice that we hear will belong to the person whose line is unmuted. That person will then be recognized by the moderator and asked to restate their name and provide their street address. We will repeat this process until we have unmuted every phone line. It is very important that you say your name each time when prompted by the moderator. If the moderator unmutes a phone line and does not hear a voice after the prompt, that phone line will be removed from the conference. If you have called in and are also streaming the meeting on YouTube or watching on television, please silence your other device when you speak. Otherwise, there will be an echo because there is a slight delay in the TV and streaming broadcast. Third, I ask that all speakers keep their comments brief and germane to the application. Obscene, offensive, and threatening language will not be tolerated. Anyone violating this rule will receive a warning, and if the conduct continues, I will ask the moderator to mute that person's phone line. If the violation is egregious, that person will be muted immediately. Fourth, the public was provided opportunity to submit written comments on the application via mail and email. These comments have been published on the town's website as a .pdf file and are embedded on the online agenda. For the record, the zoning enforcement officer will now read the names of all those who submitted written comments.
No written comments submitted for this application.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Birmingham. Members of the public are welcome to continue sending comments to comments.tpz@westhartfordct.gov, and those comments will be distributed to members of the board and also read into the record. Finally, I'd like to outline for all attendees the rules of engagement and how the board operates the public hearing. Those presenting or commenting should state their name and address for the record. Please spell your name. Board members may ask questions during the testimony of the applicant. All questions and comments will be directed through the chair and only after recognition by the chair, including follow-up comments. If feasible, the chair will have the members hold their questions until the end of the applicant's presentation or the end of a logical break in the applicant's presentation. Following the testimony of the applicant, the public will have a chance to comment about the current application in the following order in the manner previously described. The applicant will make his or her presentation. Then members of the public wishing to speak in favor of the application will be invited to speak. And then members of the public speaking in opposition to the application will be invited to speak. Upon the conclusion of the public's comments, the applicant will have the opportunity to address the opinions expressed. Upon the conclusion of the applicant's rebuttal, and if there are no further questions from the board, the public hearing will be closed. It is the practice of the board to render a decision on an application the same night, following all items on the public meeting agenda. I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone in advance for your patience. This is only the second virtual public hearing, and we are still learning from the experience. There are bound to be some bumps and glitches along the way, but we do remain committed to the principles of open and transparent government. With that, will the applicant please proceed with their presentation?
Hello, can everyone hear me? All right. Good evening. My name is Marcy Miller, and I'm a resident at White Pine Lane with my husband, Scott. As Brian mentioned, we are looking to have a variance to the rear setback of our property. Right now, our house is about 53 feet from the back property line, which on a 1.5 acre lot is pretty close. Our back property neighbor is the MDC. We are in R40 zoning, and I guess I will say that there's a couple of reasons why we think we have a hardship and we would like this variance granted. First, our house is set much further back than 6 of the other 7 neighbors we have on our street. We are over 100 feet back from White Pine Lane. I believe this was done because of the slope of our property and to get our house a little higher up on the hill. And we have 2 back doors, that one from the dining room, or a double set of French doors on the dining room and the kitchen that open up to the back property line. And right now we have a small patio that is just a little bit uncomfortable. We'd like to raise it up about 30 inches so we are more on the level of the doors and the trail behind us. right now it's a little bit of a fishbowl when we sit out there, and it's just uncomfortable. So we don't use that space in our yard. And in order for us to build something similar anywhere else in our house, we'd have to reconfigure the entry points into it. And then I guess that's it. Those are our three things. The location of the house, the two doors, and then the slope of the property and how that back space is not comfortable right now. I sent along pictures and plot plans. If anyone wants to see them, I can share my screen if that's helpful, but I do think that everyone has what they need to review the application.
So thank you for that, Ms. Miller. I noticed there is a what appears to be perhaps a shed to the right of your property, looking straight at it. Is that correct? There seems
Well, no, we don't have a shed. The plot plan shows our neighbor's shed in our yard, and we have a garden that is showing up as a shed. That we have a deer fence around, but we do not have an enclosed shed with a roof. And I would like one someday, but we don't have one.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Okay. And so the variance is for, I think, 14 feet. Is that right? So what is the setback for, what is the setback requirement for this zone?
It's 50 feet. I think that we are 53 feet from the fence line or the MDC property line. And yeah, so I think we're 3 feet. We would need anything more than 3 feet. We're thinking, we put in for 18 feet just because, you know, you buy 12-foot lengths of deck. That's what our builder told us to do. I strongly think that there's no way we would get as long as 36 feet because I don't want to cover my basement window. So I think it would end up more like 30 feet in width by up to 18 feet, but we wouldn't exceed that.
Okay, so are you, and I don't want to box you into anything you're not comfortable, but would you
Okay.
be willing to say, would you be willing to have us then, if we were to consider your application favorably, would you be willing to modify the variance request to 30 feet rather than 36?
I would consider that, but I'm just asking if that makes a difference because it's just the width.
Well,
It's not, yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
Continue.
understood. And our charge, as I think you're aware, because you mentioned the hardship rule, is to authorize the smallest variance. And so
I knew I shouldn't have said that.
the smaller it is. Okay, so if you want to stay with 36, we can stay with 36. And
Can I meet you in the middle?
if you want to stay with 36, we'll stay with 36. I don't think it'll make much of a difference. But because you volunteered, I thought, well, here's your.
I think it would probably, I'd be comfortable with 32. Because what we want to do is, you know, we want like a stair off the side. We know we don't want to put the stairs towards the back. So we want to be able to create like a little walkway. So yeah, I mean, I'd be perfectly comfortable with 32.
Okay, and Ms. Miller, do you know the year your house was built?
I believe it was in the early 60s, maybe 62 or 63.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Are there any other members of the board that have questions for the applicant?
This is Don Neville. Through the chair, if I could just ask the applicant, I understand the idea that the house is placed so far back that it essentially puts you right at the setback line. But what I didn't understand was the part about the slope of the property. Is there, because part of what we have to figure out is whether there's something endemic to the property that makes it such that this is a reasonable one. I understand your point about the location. I just want to make sure I also understood the slope issue, which I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So as in many houses, when you walk out our back kitchen door, the back dining room door, you go down 3 steps. And And then from there to walk out, we have a gate to the MDC property, which is 53 feet away, probably, maybe a little bit less or more based on where they put it. But you have to walk up, and it's an incline. And then we have a publicly accessed trail 55 feet from my house, and that you have to walk up to. So if I'm sitting in my deck, I can hear the people walking on the trail talking about my house, and I feel like I'm sitting in a fishbowl. And we've done a lot. Like we've worked to be very good friends with the MDC. We've cut down 50 trees of like aging pine trees. We've replanted. We're trying to landscape in a really environmentally friendly way. We don't just want to put up fences and we don't want to block people out, but we want to create a more comfortable outdoor living space. And part of the issue is that we walk down 3 steps to go to our little patio area, and then we have to walk up probably another 5, 6, 7 feet to get to the trail. So we're at a lower grade than anyone who's walking by us. And if we can get a deck up maybe just 30 inches, and it will just feel a lot more comfortable. And it's the same concept as a front porch, essentially, you know, where it's like you create a little barrier and we're creating just a little more space without adding a roof, without putting electricity in, and without doing all those other things, you know, roof lines. But we do want to create a better outdoor living space. And we don't have any place else to do it, really.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from members of the board for the applicant? Brian, I have a question for you, which I think I know the answer to, but I was reminded during Mr. Neville's question. So theoretically, if the board approves this deck for the variance that's been requested, at a future date, if the applicant decides, you know what, this deck just isn't cutting it, and I'm still in too much public view, and I want to build a 2-story addition in the footprint of the deck, is there anything that would prohibit that, or is the variance as good for a deck as it is for a 2-story addition?
The way that we've always applied the plans associated with a variance is that those are really the determining documents as to what the variance applies to. So in this case, the deck is what you're reviewing. If the board sees fit to approve the deck, then that's what the variance is going to entitle the applicant to build. In the future, should they want to build an enclosed structure, anything that isn't a deck, then we would ask them to come back before the board to ask for that specific variance.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. That's helpful. Okay. Any other members of the board with a question for Ms. Miller? Hearing none. Mr. Moderator, is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak either for or against this application?
Mr. Chair, we currently have no call-ins.
Thank you for that. Okay, Ms. Miller, this will conclude your presentation unless you have other comments for the commission to consider.
I have one more comment to consider, and I'm sorry I didn't say this, is I know we didn't send any written letters of support from our neighbors, but a few White Pine Lane did reach out to me and ask me when they saw the sign. And they kind of joked about it, them being a little bit nosy, but, you know, I told them exactly what they want to do, and they were in support of it. If you feel that this is generally, I would say, a neighborhood, and like much of West Hartford, people want, you know, their neighbors to increase the value of their home, but not do it in a creepy way that's imposing on them. And that's not what this would do. So, you know, they basically said, you go, you know, and we got support. So if that is a deciding factor, I can get something together. But at this point, we did get voiced support from neighbors.
Okay, thank you for that. And that is helpful. So with no further comments from members of the board or from the public, this will conclude the public portion of this hearing. Ms. Miller, you're welcome to hang up and dial in either at the number that we described or on the West Hartford website for streaming. And this will conclude the public portion of the meeting. We will now proceed to the deliberations for each of the applications that we've heard tonight. Thank you. So first, I'd like to see if we can get a motion for the first application, application 06-20, 341 North Quaker Lane.
So moved. Don Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. Second?
DiMatteo, second.
Thank you, Mr. DiMatteo. Okay, so this is for landing and stairs. Quaker Lane's tough. What, 6 feet? I don't know how I feel about this one. I don't know. Sounds like you can still get to the backyard. You just don't get to the backyard the way you'd like to get to the backyard necessarily. That make it a hardship. It's hard to see that it does, but you know, I'm open to being convinced otherwise.
This is Don Neville. I didn't hear anything with respect to I didn't hear any hardship, or at least I didn't hear one that's on the list of things that we should consider. I just don't see how we approve it. I commiserate. I don't want to give any indication that there isn't sympathy and empathy for it. I completely commiserate, but I think our hands are tied on what we have to find in order to have a variance.
A justification for variance. And unfortunately, I think I'm in the same spot. Mr. DiMatteo?
My thought was just being able to exit the property if there wasn't if they had to exit the home, if there was a fire or anything like that. So there's 2 exit points. There's 3 bedrooms. That was my only thing.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to find an opportunity here to approve it. But if you look at it at its face, there isn't really a hardship, and that's the guiding line that we use when applicants come before us.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. No further comment.
Okay. How about Mr. D'Amato? Any other further comment?
I concur with what everybody's saying. I agree that it's tough. I live not that far away, and property lines are tight. But I just worry about how many other properties are in the same boat and what that does for us moving forward.
Yep. Okay. Well, sensing we're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Oh, actually, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to jump in on you here. We have to, just by virtue of the virtual type of meeting that we're running, we actually have to run a roll call vote. So I'll just run through that if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Pudlick. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So we'll start with Commissioner D'Amato.
Nay.
Commissioner Doyle.
Nay.
Commissioner DiMatteo.
Nay.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
And Commissioner Neville.
Nay.
Okay, so that is 5 noes. This variance does not pass.
Okay. Again, with sympathy for the applicant, our apologies. Next application, 68 Richard Street. May I get a motion for approval of the application?
So moved.
So moved.
Tune.
Don Neville seconded.
Just for the record, was that Michael Johnson with a motion?
Yep, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, I have no issues with this. This is the kind of business I wouldn't mind having next door to me. The guy just receives, deliveries and has a client show up once in a blue moon. This is fine with me. Anyone else? Permitted use?
I agree. DiMatteo.
I agree.
Okay. With no other comments, and I'm going once, going twice, I'll give it a minute. All right, Mr. Public, would you call the roll, please, for the vote?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner D'Amato,
Yes.
Commissioner Doyle,
Yes.
Commissioner DiMatteo, Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Neville.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's 5 yeses and a unanimous approval.
Okay, terrific. So now we move on to the last one. May I get a motion to approve the application? Hold on, get the number. Apologies. May I get a motion to approve application 09-20?
So moved.
And a second?
Second. D'Amato.
All right, thank you both. This one's a little tougher for me. Okay, the house is at the back. You may say, well, applicant's just enjoying a privilege of a well set back house. I think what makes a difference to me is what's behind the house, which is public space. To maybe this should matter, maybe it shouldn't, but because it's public, because of the slope, that is meaningful to me. I know what it's like to live below grade and not have a kind of separate space. The MDC is a neighbor. I don't think we're concerned about, I don't want to say not concerned about encroaching. It's just, this is the kind of neighbor that would probably be indifferent to whether there's a deck or not a deck. So I'm leaning toward approval on this one, but again, open to others' thoughts.
DiMatteo, didn't we have an applicant come before us a couple of months ago? And they were, because of the slope of the plat, it kind of leaned us towards approving their variance. Do you guys remember that one?
Was it a deck, Angelo?
That's what I'm asking, Brian. I don't remember. What?
I can't say that I remember exactly, Commissioner DiMatteo. I have to say, given the past couple of months and everything that's been going on, my memory's gotten a little foggy on past variances. Going back into last year, I don't recall.
Okay.
But certainly, I think I could say with relative certainty that variances have been granted in the past with the slope being part of the consideration.
Okay.
This is John Neville. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Finish.
I was just going to say that I'm leaning towards agreeing with Todd here on this as well, given the fact that there isn't another home or residence behind this applicant. I guess I could be persuaded to agree and approve this applicant. That's all.
Mr. Neville?
My thought about the slope is that the slope has always been used to explain why something can't be somewhere that it would normally otherwise be or would otherwise be compliant. I have never heard of somebody proffer slope as the hardship for the location of the variance. I'm not saying it couldn't. I understand what they're saying. I think the problem with it is I don't think that qualifies. I don't think that element qualifies as a hardship. It's the land is what it is. It'd be different if they said, well, we can't put it anywhere else because of slope, and this is the only place we can put it. That I would understand a little bit more, which is why I wanted to get clarity. And I understand the issue about the house being further back. I think the problem I have with that is I think that's a benefit. And I struggle with the idea of, there's certainly been other ones in which you say, well, that's the house. I mean, I'm not sure what to say about that. But I struggle with it. I am actually leaning towards not approving it. And I understand the thoughts about MDC, but I'm never comfortable with the idea that we reach a decision based upon a neighbor's consent or lack thereof. I don't think that should be a deciding factor, except in some, maybe some very limited circumstances. But there's my thoughts.
Yep. So, Mr. Neville, if I may, I agree. I think you're right in terms of who the neighbor is shouldn't make a difference. In this case, I think the combination of who the neighbor is and the slope leads me to a different thought process. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but here's my thought process. You got a public trail. First of all, you have a huge setback. 50 feet is huge, right? I don't even think my lot's 50 feet deep. It's 50 feet is a lot. But you've got a public trail 5 feet from the house. And what's interesting about the public trail is it's not a traffic trail. It's not a vehicular trail, unless you count bikes. It's a walking trail. So what do you do when you walk? You look around. And where are you going to look? You're going to look where you see the most. And where do you see the most? Downhill. Your eyes are going to go down. And who's on display but the applicant? So you've got a combination of the type of traffic, because it's the MDC, and the slope, which leads me to think, is there any privacy there? You can't put a deck in the front because deck, it's got to be off the kitchen. It should be in the back. You don't want the neighbors necessarily to be, wanting to join in each time you have a social gathering. So you put the deck on the back, but you have 3 feet. So you don't have any kind of, you can do a hardscape, but hardscape, and maybe hardscape with a fence, right? It just seems to me that not 100%, but maybe 70%, I get convinced that the unique circumstances surrounding this property suggest there could be a hardship. I don't know.
So I don't disagree. I understand what you're saying. Maybe I had misunderstood. I mean, from the pictures that I saw, they have a patio.
Yes.
Right? So, and she talked about raising it up 30 inches.
Yes.
So I don't understand how getting the deck blunts anything with respect to the MDC walk line.
If I may, just to try to add a point of clarity here.
Cool.
What I heard was adding the 30 inches, in other words, raising the open space, if you will. The hardscape obviously is at grade. If you raise it up by having a deck that's 30 inches higher, it lessens the opportunity for people to view in off of the trail. I think it brings them more slightly in line with instead of at this downward angle. I think that's what the applicant was trying to achieve.
I don't disagree. I agree with you. Raising it 2.5 feet was going to limit that. And part of it is what I did not see in the pictures was a picture of how high up it is. But if you look at the last page and the bottom picture, I had assumed, and maybe I'm wrong, that the gentle grade going up to the left is the grade going up to the MDC line.
Ms. Miller indicated that it was approximately 5 to 7 feet higher than her patio.
Right. I mean, I guess what I'm suggesting is the 2.5 feet is going to limit it a little bit, no question about it. But what it doesn't do is eliminate it. And so I struggle a little bit with feeling like what they really want is a deck that is they want to have a patio that's above grade, that's in fact closer to the height of the house, because it works into a little bit of a bowl. And I think the slope is a problem because people look down on it, but I understand everything that you're saying, Todd. I don't think there's a right or a wrong on this one. That's for sure. I'm just not there, but I don't have to be. So this still can pass without me.
How about,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, go ahead, please.
the one thing that, I mean, I agree actually with everything that's been said, both for and against. The one thing that I do think it's unique in that there aren't many properties that probably have this trail, you know, right up against the rear property line. If I had to guess, and without being well versed on the history of how West Hartford was developed, my guess is they pushed this house so far back, and then the trail came second. And I think if the trail wasn't there or was there before, they would have pulled the building out of the setback. I just think that they pushed it back because there was nothing back there. It was MDC owned and didn't think much about maybe what was to come in the future. And I do feel that having a public walking path in perpetuity does create a unique characteristic. And, you know, certainly their perspective is that it prevents them from enjoying their property and that the regs affect them differently because of it. So I agree that, you know, some of the things we heard might not be what we were used to, but I think this is a little bit different for me.
That's a good point. And Brian, I don't know if you know, or as kind of a secondary question to what Mr. D'Amato has said, that path goes along a number of neighborhoods in West Hartford. Do we know whether all of the neighborhoods have a 50-foot setback? And should we be considering that? You know, if is it 50 feet in some places and 15 in others?
I would hazard to say that most of the properties that butt up against the MDC properties are probably a range of R20 zones and R40 zones. The R20 zone has a 40-foot rear yard setback. The R40 zone has a 50-foot rear yard setback. Yeah, so and on top of that, there's some the MDC property is enormous, and so some of the MDC actually abuts up against what we call Canal Road, which is sort of a paper street that runs north-south on the mountain. So it's a range of different circumstances.
Do you know about when that walking path was developed? Has that always been there?
Unfortunately, I don't know that information, no.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, any thoughts on this application?
Great comments all around. I think Mike had really interesting insight though regarding the development of the walking trail, most likely, you know, after the development of the property. And I think that's something significant to value. I would say at this point, I'm leaning in support of the application.
I guess the only thing I would say is I would hate for us to approve the application with the understanding that the trail was developed after the property was developed, only to find later that the trail was developed before the property was before the home was built, and then have people scratching their heads if we have other applicants in similar circumstances. So I suppose we can vote in favor or against regardless of our reasoning for doing so, and I think that's where we end up. But yeah, I think it's one consideration among many. Certainly, the trail is more popular now than I'm sure it was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, or particularly in 1962. But, okay. Mr. Pudlick?
I just wanted to point out that, and I know there's been a fair amount of discussion around the house being set back. But the reality is that the building line setback, which typically establishes where homes are set up along a street, is, I didn't measure it exactly off of the map, but it's probably 100 feet forward of where the house is. And so if this house were anywhere between where it is now and the building line, she wouldn't be before you tonight asking for a variance, because she would be able to build whatever deck she wants to build. And so I think that is an important aspect of this application to consider. And forgive me if I'm overstepping my bounds here as a.
No, it's a good insight. And so if I understand your point, it's that, well, perhaps if you're thinking about hardship, the hardship is builder built the house too far back on the lot versus where it needed to be. The house could have had a deck had it been built 14 feet forward, and it could have well have been built 14 feet forward.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point.
Brian,
it used to be about 170 feet back from the road, and the building line is a 50-foot building line there. So
there's your 20 feet. Yeah. Mr. D'Amato?
Brian, do you have any idea, and I know this puts you on the spot, as far as what might have come first, the 50-foot rear yard setback or this development? I mean, in the 60s, I know sometimes towns adjust setbacks, and is it possible that the 50-foot setback was not in play when the house was built?
Absolutely. The building line setback was most likely in play, but the 50-foot rear yard setback, I don't believe was. We had a different set of residential zoning districts at that time, and they all had different standards.
I guess where I am at this point is I think the risk to derogation of the zoning ordinance allowing this variance is low. I think it's a unique property. I think the variance is modest given the dimensions of the lot. I think there are some mitigating circumstances here. A handful, regardless of how you want to weigh one or the other of them. So I would be inclined to pass it. But, we can take a vote, but before we do so, does anyone else have other comments they would like to voice? Hearing none, Mr. Pudlick, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'll start with Commissioner D'Amato.
Yes.
Commissioner Doyle.
Yes.
Commissioner DiMatteo.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
And Commissioner Neville.
No.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's 4 yeses, and that is enough for the variance to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Pudlick, and thank you all for a good discussion. I think we have one more matter on the agenda. Is that the approval of minutes, Mr.
Minutes, yes. And it occurred to me that I may not have sent the minutes out to the board in advance of this meeting. And so while we were having while I believe one of the presentations was going on, I sent out an email link to those minutes from the May 27th meeting. If anybody needs some time to review those.
I'm just reviewing them as we speak here. I'd like to make
I think I'll have to recuse. I wasn't in attendance, so you won't have me for the vote.
Thank you.
And Mr. Pudlick, I'd like to move that we approve the May 27th minutes.
Second.
Okay, so very good. So we'll run through the roll call vote here. This is going to be, let's see, Todd Doyle,
Approve.
Angelo DiMatteo,
Approved.
Michael Johnson,
Yes.
and Don Neville.
I don't approve these. I want to have an extended discussion about them. I'm just kidding. I approve those.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate your sense of humor.
Any other items of business on our agenda, Mr. Pudlick?
We do not have any other items of business.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Neville, would you like to second that without discussion?
Yes.
All those in favor? Mr. Pudlick?
I'll do that. I'll just run through the roll call here quickly. Commissioner D'Amato,
Yes.
Commissioner Doyle,
Yes.
Commissioner DiMatteo,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Neville.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 5 yeses. That's enough to adjourn this meeting.
Thank all of you for your participation tonight. I
Great
appreciate it.
job, Todd.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Really,
Well done, everybody.
Have a good night.
we're at, so the end of this meeting brings us to the September meeting.